So WWDC, the Worldwide Developers Conference for Apple, happened on Monday, and there was loads and loads of things released from a software standpoint, and no hardware release, which I was quite disappointed about because I was expecting something like a new MacBook Air, another new MacBook Air, maybe another MacBook Pro, because we kind of could do with another one of those. Maybe even a Mac Mini, because we definitely need one of those. I do also have a brew. I have a Celtics NBA top on because I can't really be bothered. I've just come home from work and I'm so tired. I just want to get this video done. So really, the only two things Apple really released, which are big points, were iOS 8 and Mac OS Yosemite, or Yosemite as I'm now going to call it. So I'll go through what was actually announced to do with iOS 8, and I'll also mention what happened with Yosemite at the end, because it's kind of like most of the stuff was more iOS based and more general than it was just specifically one thing on the other. So the big key thing is that they get third-party keyboard support, which is fantastic. That's like they've needed that for bloody ages, because the iOS keyboard is just pathetic. It's shit. It doesn't give you like an option of 3 words, which every other keyboard does. Even like most of the OEM keyboards you get in Android, you get quite a good choice of words, and the autocorrection is a lot better on third-party keyboards, especially things like SwiftKey, which is the one I use on Android. It's effing amazing. You should go down and download it anyway if you're on Android. And obviously then when iOS 8 comes out, which will be this fall, which is autumn for us that live in the civilized world, which will be like October, it'll probably be roundabout when they do another announcement for things for their next iPhone, because that's usually what happens. They'll like release some software and say, oh yeah, there's gonna be this new software, and then when that kind of release date happens, there'll be then some more hardware released to kind of tie into it a little bit. So there will probably be an iPhone release. There might be another iPad release, not that you necessarily need to worry about that too much. And there might then be another Mac, either a MacBook or a Mac release as well. Who knows? So yeah, that means that things like Swipe as well can be integrated, and Flexi as well. So they're all going to come to iOS. They're all being developed at the moment, and I believe some of them are in beta at the moment as well, because iOS 8 is available to developers within beta, so you can beta test that, and that's really quite sweet. You've now got interactive notifications. Now this is something you've had in Android for ages, really. I don't know when it actually came in. It probably would have been one of the early Android days. And basically, you can reply to text within a notification center, which is great. You can reply to tweets. You can accept calendar appointments. You can do loads and loads of stuff. And so that kind of means you then don't have to go into the app to actually do the stuff you want to do. Also, there's going to be widgets within the notification center. Not that we necessarily need them. They're not going to do like Android does, where they've got apps and widgets on the same page. They're going to have the widgets in the notification center and on your home screen, which is really quite cool. It's not going to make me want to get an iOS device, but it's still quite cool anyway. One thing that's really good, which they should have done in the first place, is you're getting better search, you're getting better spotlight, you're getting just a much better experience. It's kind of a little bit like Google now, but Apple's own version of it, I suppose, so it kind of is copying Android quite a bit. But basically it's giving you the ability to not only search your local contacts, your emails, everything you can do anyway. It's also giving you the ability to search movies and songs on iTunes, which is fantastic, and then obviously purchase them as well. Search movie showtimes, so if you want to go and watch, I don't know, Edge of Tomorrow or I don't know, the Lego film, it'll tell you showtimes for your local cinema, which is great. It'll also search Wikipedia and maps as well, which is pretty much what Google now does. The other fantastic piece of news, which is something that again should have come ages ago. We should have had this since the initial release of, well, not necessarily the initial release of iOS, but when Android released it, they should have pretty much copied it at the time, which is being able to share data across apps. So within Android, for instance, if I am, I'm just trying to think, if I've got a photo editing app, for instance, I want to, like, for instance, PhotoGrid, which you can kind of do this anyway within PhotoGrid within iOS because of the way it's programmed. But with PhotoGrid on Android, basically what you can do is you can edit your shit, and then when you're ready to upload and share it to whatever, you can share it to anything that any of the apps support. So I could share it to Pocket if I really wanted to. I could add it to my buffer list. I could add it to Hootsuite. I could add it to Twitter. I could add it to Plume. I could add it to Facebook. I could add it to Instagram. I could add it to any app that supports that supports sort of cross-app sharing, which is fantastic, and that means that's going to come to iOS now. So there's going to be things. So for instance, things like if you had like a mail, like the Daily Mail, which is a shit newspaper anyway, but the Daily Mail, you can access them articles for free, or as I would say, the Times. But you could find an article you liked, you can share it directly from the actual app without having to go here, there, and everywhere, and it would go directly to Twitter, and it would be fantastic and great. Obviously, you have got already got social integration, but what it means is third-party developers have got that integration now, so that they can pull things down from other apps, which is fantastic. And this should have happened ages and ages and ages ago. The other new thing that Apple are doing, as well as copying near as damn it everybody else, is that they're going to bring their own iCloud drive, which is pretty much like Dropbox / Google Drive / OneDrive / box.net, I think it's called. And they're still going to provide you with normal iCloud support, iCloud up to 5 gigabytes, I think it is, for free. They're going to now give you the option to go to 20 gigabytes for $1 a month, where it's 99 cents, or 200 gigabytes for $3.99 US, which actually isn't too bad. I mean, it is a bit shit I suppose it's really good from the fact that within iCloud you can use the iWork suite pretty much anywhere you like, so that is really quite cool. And the fact that you can store more things in iCloud is really good. They kind of needed to be able to have greater storage for a while. There is apparently going to be some like terabyte kind of tier level stuff, which is going to be really expensive. No word yet on when that's actually going to happen. They kind of were a bit candid about that. The other great thing that's happening is HealthKit. Now, basically what I thought was going to happen this time around, which we sort of knew something like this was going to happen anyway, but there was going to be some APK that came out or something like that would deal with fitness, and that would deal with smartwatches, and that would deal with step counting and things like that. So think of Fitbit, but like something that you could roll into a smartwatch. That's what we were expecting. Maybe not an actual smartwatch itself, but we were expecting something like that. And that's pretty much what HealthKit does. HealthKit is kind of, it's a proprietary, it's an app, but it's like an APK kind of app. It's more for developers than anybody else. And basically what it can do is it can tie in all your fitness stuff all together. So for instance, if you've got Fitbit, great, that's fine. If you've got a Nike Fuel thing, that's great, that's fine as well. Nike Plus, whatever that shit thing you put in your running shoes is as well, that'll go in there. Things like dieting apps, so if you use MyFitnessPal, for instance, that's going in there. Things like Runkeeper will go in there, and Strava, if you use that, that's a really good biking app. So everything that kind of deals with health is going to be tied into this one app, and that's pretty much going to then tie into whichever smartwatch Apple eventually bring out, if they decide to. I think they probably will, because they bought out, well, now that Nike's Nike's Fuel division's pretty much closed down, they've got out of the wearable smartwatchy kind of step countery world now, and so a lot of the developers there went to Apple, and so that's kind of where the rumours have come from in terms of smartwatches and stuff like that. The other thing that HealthKit's going to do is it's going to tie into that M chip. The M chip they released last, was it when they brought out the iPhone 5S? I think they released this M chip, which dealt with telematics, and it did with all sorts of stuff. So you had gyroscopes and GPS, and everything was tied to this one sensor. That's kind of where they want things to move towards. At the moment, they're doing some work with doctors and like healthcare professionals in America at the moment to see whether or not they can use that as a, heart monitors and stuff like that, and tie it within HealthKit, which is really quite cool. Not that I necessarily want Apple controlling everything to do with healthcare, because that could end in tears, especially in the US healthcare system, which is completely nasty crap. The other great thing, which is kind of copied from Steam a little bit, is family sharing. So what they've released within iOS 8 is up to 6 family members can automatically share photos, calendars, reminders, and location data, which is really good for parents, maybe not so much for kids, especially when you get to a certain age, like 14 and stuff like that. Perhaps, when you're taking dick pics, or when you're taking pictures of your girlfriend or whatever, that might not be such a good idea, but it is really good for parents, because what it means is you've got location data there, you've got all these other kind of stuff, and it's really good for just general sharing across around and about anyway. But not only that, but it also gives you the ability to share the content you buy. So for instance, if mum, which is highly unlikely, but if my mum, for instance, bought a song, and I heard it and I really loved it, and I was like, oh my god, I've got to get this song. And I had an iPhone and she had an iPhone, and it was bought through iTunes. I could have that song as well on my iCloud, but you know, the funny iTunes Match thing, and I could download it to my phone and I can listen to it as if I bought it, which is really quite cool. It's really good idea, and not only that, it's not only songs, it's books, it's movies, it's apps, which is fantastic. So if my mum bought 50 Shades of Grey, which she probably would, and then I wanted to watch it, read it, which I definitely wouldn't. 50 Shades of Grey is the one you want to be reading. But if, for instance, I wanted to read that, I could, and it would sync it across, and I would own it, even though she's paid for it. And the final thing to do with family sharing is it's all tied to one credit card. Now that sounds like a really bad idea, but basically what happens is if, for instance, I don't know, your son Freddie decided to buy, I don't know, XXX Babes or something like that on the movie store. I don't even know if they do porn in Apple movie store. They'd be stupid not to do porn because the amount of money they'd earn, it'd be ridiculous. But for instance, yeah, somebody bought something. Everybody's, well, certain specific people, so the parents are notified that they've spent the money, which is really quite good. Obviously, this is something you still have to enable. And if you've got like really spoiled kids, which you probably will if you're going to give them an iPhone, they probably won't want family sharing enabled because, say, when they're taking naked selfies of their skinny, horrendous, runty little bodies and then uploading them to Instagram and then being posted on Shit Pussy Say, yeah, they probably won't want that to happen. So it's a really good idea. Whether or not it'll be used, I don't know. And obviously, parents will need to be educated on how to use it, and I suppose the Apple Store geniuses might be able to do something funkified when they buy the phone, but unless everybody has an iPhone, it kind of might not work very well. So the other thing that's coming is a new Photos app. It's going to be embedded with iCloud. So what's now going to happen is you take a picture, and because at the moment what happens is you've got a separate folder that basically when you take a picture of something, it'll put it in your photo stream, it'll put it in your just cameras folder, and it'll also then put it in your photo stream, which is then synced across all your devices, and that's it. So what they're going to do is they're pretty much going to get rid of a local photo gallery and have this cloud photo gallery that's synced across everything. So every picture that I've got on my iPad will also be on my Mac. If I own one, it will be on my iPhone if I own one as well, which is a really good idea. It will be annoying if it actually uses the space on the device though, because I find because I use my iPad for DSLR photos. So I'll take a photo on my DSLR, I'll upload it to Dropbox, although if I can do it via iCloud now, that'd be great. Upload it via iCloud, and because DSLR photos are about 2 meg, they're quite big, and so sometimes I'll have like 100 photos and it'll say, oh no, you've run out of space, especially by the time you've got podcasts on it and stuff like that. So I'm hoping that it doesn't actually store it locally on the device, it stores it in the cloud, and then you can kind of pull it down as and when you like. That would be better, but I don't know, because obviously if you've got like a 64 gig iPad, that's going to have a lot more space than your 16 gigabyte iPhone, for instance, and it's equal to your Mac device, which actually isn't going to come out just yet. So they've got this syncing thing, but it doesn't quite sync with Mac OS, not yours and mine when that comes out. So it's kind of only within iOS devices at the moment, but it will be coming to Mac in next year, 2015, early 2015 they reckon. So the other great thing that they're doing as well, they're improving the Mail app, not like to that much of an extent, but what they're doing is they're making it better for businesses in terms of encryption, in terms of businessy stuff, and they're also bringing in some new gestures so it sort of flows a little bit better, because at the moment the Mails app's always kind of been a little bit they've been a little bit shit. It was really good when they brought out iOS 7. They did do a bit of a revamp then, and it was a lot better than it was before in iOS 6 and in iOS 5 and in iOS 4, because iOS 4 version I think was pretty shit. The Mail app has always been crap. I don't know how good it is within macOS. I've never used a macOS device, although I'm still umming on whether or not to buy one now. iMessage gets a revamp, and it's kind of pretty much they're trying to copy WhatsApp, because they realise that actually WhatsApp's got the majority of the market share. So iMessage is now kind of trying to be like WhatsApp, trying to be like Snapchat to a certain extent, trying to be like every other messaging platform that exists. So they're adding voice and video messaging, which you can do in WhatsApp. They're adding better group messages, which you could do before, but they were a little bit shit. They kind of work a lot better now. Multi-photo uploading, so you don't have to go in and select individual photos. You can just tap all the ones you want to share to people, again like WhatsApp, and all media that's part of the conversation is there, pretty much at a finger's touch. again, like WhatsApp is. But the thing with iMessage is that you've got to have an iOS device, and unless they release iMessage for every device, they're not going to get the market share, and it's kind of pointless. It's like, because iMessage doesn't never work properly anyway. iMessage rarely delivers messages and stuff, and it's kind of a bit of a shit experience. But if they released iMessage and if they got the cloud system sorted out for a start, got the servers nailed down, and if they released iMessage on every device, then yes, that would make perfect sense. Copy WhatsApp and it's fine. But when you've got WhatsApp and when you've got Kik and when you've got Viber and you've got all these other messaging apps you can use and text on top of that, why would you go with iMessage? Because not all your friends are going to have iMessage. Maybe a handful of friends might do, but now Android devices are so good, a lot of people aren't going to have iPhones anymore. I only know a handful of people that do have iPhones. And the majority of people at work don't have iPhones. I mean, you get the odd one fanboy that pops up, but the majority of people don't use iMessage. And so, for me, WhatsApp's probably the best bet. Kik's a second best, and obviously then third best is SMS for just everybody else that decides they don't want to actually use cloud services because either they're paranoid, like me, or they just are on some horrendously old phone. So Touch ID is being released as a sort of like an open APK now, so all developers can use it and they can use it to log into other apps. It's the same as Touch ID has always been though, so that it stores it encrypted on your device. It doesn't ever leave the device, it doesn't ever go into the cloud. There's never going to be a time where it could accidentally possibly even be uploaded to the cloud and sent to the developers and all that other kind of stuff, which is fantastic. It's really, really good for that. So hopefully there'll be some really sweet stuff like, say, you can authenticate via Twitter, for instance, via a fingerprint, which would be really good. Siri gets an update, aka sort of like a bit like Google Now again. It's going to have real-time voice search this time, so as you speak, it's going to start typing what you're speaking. It's also going to have, pretty much, it's going to be always on. So you just say, what you're supposed to say is, "Hey Siri," and it's supposed to wake up, and it's supposed to do whatever you want it to do. It's also got things like Shazam integration now, so you can actually tag songs and stuff in it, and all sorts of funky stuff. So it's pretty much Google Now, really. Like, that's what Apple are doing. They're copying Google Now because they realise it's a really good idea. And so that's that. The other thing that's happening, which is another very good thing for developers, is app bundles and video previews in the App Store. So, like with Steam and Origin, well, not Origin because that's not third party, but things like Steam, for instance. As a developer, so for me, if I was a developer, because I don't develop because I find it mind-numbingly boring and I don't know that much coding, if I was a developer and I had about 3 or 4 apps that either kind of worked together or that were all made by me, to encourage people to buy those apps, what I can now do is I can bundle them together for a cheaper price. So for instance, let's say I had 3 productivity apps that did a similar equivalent to Word, a similar equivalent to PowerPoint, and a similar equivalent to Excel, and individually cost £10 each. And I decided to bundle them up all together for 15 quid because I'm nice like that. I can now do that, which is really great. It's really good for developers in terms of getting their money. It's really great in terms of customers because they get bundles now, and it's just really good, and that's kind of really quite sweet. The other thing they added was the ability to have video previews, which is really fantastic. They haven't had that before, but Android's had that since pretty much they changed to Google Play, and so that's really good, so you can actually see a video of the actual app doing its shizery, as opposed to having to go to YouTube and actually do a bit of a review and see what actually the app looks like and how it behaves. And pretty much the final major thing that came out with iOS 8 is HomeKit, which is basically a proprietary APK that allows home automation devices to talk to an iOS device and for them all to kind of communicate together in this really secure way. And it's really, really sweet. Basically, Wwdc this year has been very developer focused. As much as Wwdc is a developers conference, usually it kind of isn't a developers conference. They usually announce software, maybe some hardware as well, and they don't go too much into the background as a developer in terms of SDKs, SDKs, and stuff like that. They don't generally go into that kind of depth. And this time round, there's loads of things for developers in terms of SDKs that can kind of link with different parts of the OS, which is really great. So say you've now pretty much got free reign within iOS to do whatever you want. You can share things between apps, you can do loads of funky things, you've got third-party keyboard support, you've got all this great stuff which you've had on Android for years and is now coming to iOS, which is really good for iOS users because they're actually now having, they're living in 2014 and not 2003, where you can, share things across the board and have pretty much an open system for you to do what you want. But yeah, basically HomeKit is, the idea behind it is that if I had an iPhone, my iPhone is the only device that should be able to access the goodies that I have that are home automated. So for instance, my iPhone is the only iPhone in the entire world that can open my garage door. It cannot be hacked. I have to have my iPhone with me and it has to be that specific one. And that's kind of where HomeKit comes into it. I mean, it is a proprietary thing, and if people adopt it as a standard, we desperately need a home automation standard that has a common SDK, that has a common programming language that works in a similar way, so that every device that we have that's connected to the Wi-Fi and that is part of home automation can talk to each other, and it's fantastic, and you can use any app you want, and it's really good. That's what we need. However, Google being Google will probably release their own thing, especially now they own Nest. Apple then probably release their own thing. Microsoft might release their own thing, and then there'll be a few third-party things that'll be kicking around, and nobody will be using the standard thing. There will be a few devices that will use that SDK and that will link it with iOS really well because it's kind of the kind of customers that they're looking for. What I'd really love to see is I'd really love for Google, and because now they own Nest, I'd love for Nest to integrate itself and to use HomeKit as a standard and to allow Android to also use HomeKit as a standard and have it as a thing that everybody can use. So it doesn't matter what OS you've got, both Windows, Mac, iOS, Android, Windows Phone, it can all use it and it can all tie into one app and it'll be really great. That's what I'd love to see, but that's not going to happen because people are always, oh, well, I've got to have the best thing, I've got to be better than you, we've got to innovate more than you and this, that and the other. It'd be really good if Google, some colleagues from, a department from Google and a department from Apple came together and worked together on HomeKit and released it as an open source standard. How great would that be? That'd be fantastic. Get some industry leaders together, get some really good engineers together, have HomeKit as this thing that was designed by Apple from the ground, from the beginning, but then engineered by Google, because Google have got some fantastic engineers, they really have, and have it as an open source SDK that anybody can use, and you don't have to license it. That would be really good, because it would be really good for Google, it would be really good for Apple, and it would be really good for the tech industry at large. They won't do that because they're very self-centered and they're just like, oh, well, no, because that means sharing resources, and we don't want to do that because then our investors won't like us and all other crap. So annoyingly, they won't do that, but that's what I'd love to see. That would be fantastic. There's a few things that Apple didn't talk about, which there's a link in this. Well, I'm going to put all the links in the description below. There's going to be tons of links. Pretty much all Engadget stuff and a few Verge things. Engadget is pretty much the best place to go for all the information because it's pretty much all there, and they're kind of short and sweet articles, which are really good. But there was a few things that weren't actually officially announced in the keynote, but they've got a separate focus and exposure controls within the camera app now. DuckDuckGo is now part of Safari. If you've not heard of DuckDuckGo, it's kind of like Google but without the BS tracking and cookies and all that other kind of crap. So you can pretty much surf anonymously and they don't send any of your data to advertisers, which is really good. That's really great to see. They're going to have a panoramic mode for iPads now. They didn't release it for iPad because basically they're telling people you shouldn't be taking pictures with an iPad, which is very true. But they're now actually sort of embedding that within the camera app, which is annoying because that means more people will be using iPads to really take photos. They'll be like, oh yeah, I'm going to take a photo of this with my iPad like a bungling idiot. They're also letting you make phone calls with Wi-Fi. So if you've got Wi-Fi, you can now make phone calls. At the moment, it's only on T-Mobile in the US, but I'm hoping that there'll be more things coming, more networks that will actually grab onto that, especially in the UK, because that'd be fantastic. If you can make calls via Wi-Fi as opposed to using your shitty, especially down here in Cornwall, because I don't think I can get a signal in my house at all. My parents' house at all, I have to go outside and wave it about in the air for 10 minutes before I can actually get a proper signal. So, macOS 10 Yosemite, or Yosemite, as I'm now going to call it, because I hate saying Yosemite. It is Yosemite, isn't it? I can never pronounce it properly. I think you've got to have an American accent, and I can't do an American accent properly, so I'm not even going to try and offend anybody. But the key thing is that it is a new interface. As you can see, it is very, very different. It looks more iOS-y, it looks more flat, it looks Not necessarily better. I don't really like the way it's going, because obviously what's now going to happen is iOS and macOS are going to eventually be the same thing. That's where they've been moving towards for a long, long time. That's where Microsoft have been moving towards. That's where Linux, well, Ubuntu wanted to move towards, but it didn't really work that well because they didn't really get the backing in the first place for their mobile stuff, which is a bit shit. But well, they've also got a thing called handoff syncing, which basically allows you to start an email on your iPad and finish it on your MacBook, or vice versa, or for instance start a Pages document on your MacBook and then take it away with you on your iPad, and kind of stuff like that. So there's all sorts of stuff within the iWork stuff. So if you start a document within iWork, you could then be able to go to any of your other iOS devices and you can kind of just carry on working from there, which is really great. There's going to be AirDrop between iOS and OS X devices now. So before AirDrop, when AirDrop came out, I think with Mavericks, might have actually been before that, you could only do it between Mac devices and not iOS devices, but now that's changed, so now you can do it between iOS devices and Mac devices, which is really good. There's better hotspot sharing. There's a thing called Instant Hotspot, which means it's easy to share your internet connection from your smartphone, from your iPhone. Your MacBook will detect your iPhone and say, do you want to share this connection if you haven't already got connection, and it works really well. The other thing that you can do now, well, within Yosemite, is you can send text messages and you can receive calls on every single device that you own. So every iOS device, every Apple device you own, you can receive and make calls and reply to text messages, pretty much like my SMS already does. But I suppose kind of a little bit better because it's kind of like all embedded. But my SMS does that. So I have my SMS installed on my iPad, on my Android tablet, and on my phone. So if someone texts me on my phone and my phone's been charged in another room somewhere, I can reply to the text on my iPad and it'll pop up. Same with phone calls, although I never really use that because it's kind of like a pain in the ass to try and talk to your tablet. It doesn't really work. There's going to be a Spotlight update, which is similar to Alfred. If you don't know what Alfred is, it's like a really funky search application for macOS, because Spotlight generally within macOS has been shit. It is really good. Spotlight, the new Spotlight, is supposed to be fantastically good, and Alfred was a really good alternative to that, but now obviously Apple have woken up and smelt the coffee. They actually now know that they need to create something that's really good, so that's going to happen. There's also an email update. It now apparently lets you send large attachments a lot easier. It allows you to annotate documents and fill out forms right within email messages, which is really good, and it's also faster performing, which is fantastic. There's also a big Safari update. There's a new UI for that. There's power saving tweaks. There's new tabs. There's a privacy mode, which I'm pretty sure they already had, but I don't know. There's DuckDuckGo support again. If you don't know what DuckDuckGo support is, or you don't know what DuckDuckGo is, you need to check it out. I'll put a link in the description below. It's like an anonymous search web browser search engine. It's really good. The other thing they're also doing, which is a bit bizarre, is a Bing extension for Safari that allows inline translations, which they apparently showed off at the keynote. I've not actually watched the keynote because I haven't had time, but apparently they showed off that in the keynote. Obviously iCloud support, so this is going to be like a Dropboxified iCloudy thing. That's coming to Yosemite, and it's public beta at the moment, so you can sign up for that. Even if you're not a developer, you can sign up for it. That's great, and it'll be a free upgrade in the fall or autumn if you're in the civilized world. And that's pretty much it. The only thing they did release as well is a thing called Swift, which is a new programming language. Supposed to be faster, better, easier, and safer to code on, and that's available to use now. So much so that actually someone's recreated Flappy Bird using Swift, which is really quite cool. So yes, that's pretty much everything that was announced. That's just a huge amount of stuff to go through. But basically, the take-home message from that is that they've pretty much copied Android, and they are moving towards getting iOS and macOS to be the same, which I really don't like. I really do not like that as a concept. It's a really good idea for noobs and for people that don't know anything about technology, like my parents, because they can go to any device and it'll be exactly the same, and everything will be synced across, and it doesn't matter where you go, it's going to be the same. But for me, as a technologist and as somebody that likes to geek around and stuff like that, I don't like that interface. I prefer to be able to customize it to my own thing. If I want it to look like iOS, I'll make it look like iOS. If I want it to look like OS X, I want it to look like OS X. So yeah, I don't really like the way that the Mac OS is going and the iOS is going, because they will eventually be one and the same, which is good and bad. I mean, I don't know. They'll probably end up being pretty much the same chips at the end, because they are moving towards these custom ARM chips where they chuck in iPads. They might end up chucking it in MacBook Airs eventually, because if they can get If they can get ARM chips to be the same performance, which you pretty much can now, the same performance as an Intel chip, then they're going to do it. Especially if they can release something that's a little bit cheaper. You know, if they can release like a MacBook Mini, I guess, that's kind of like an Air, like same sort of shape as an Air and same sort of size as an Air, but with less specs. You know, like a Chromebook, for instance, like similar to a Chromebook. Then I think that's probably where Apple will eventually go. Don't quote me on that. That's just my speculating, but that's that. I think we will see in October kind of time when they have another announcement. We'll probably see another an iPhone, maybe another iPad, but we don't really need another iPad. We could do with another Mac device, because Mac Mini hasn't been updated for ages. We've had a MacBook Air update, but it's not moved to Retina yet, so that might happen. And we could do with another MacBook Pro update, so that might be happening. But now, as it currently stands, I don't know what to do. I don't know whether or not just to buy an iPad Air. iPad Air. MacBook Air, I don't know whether or not to go and buy a Mac Mini, because I really could do with having a Mac device, but it's like, well, do I wait? What I really want is a Razer laptop, but they're stupidly expensive. But yes, that is pretty much it, really. I haven't really talked too much about me and my opinions of it all. It's kind of more been like a bit of a news bulletin, really, but hey ho, there we go. Obviously, hit me up on Twitter at AsYouChill, send me an email, asyouchill@gmail.com. There will be a 1K giveaway very soon. I don't know when, but it will be soon. I just need to go and get a few more bits and it'll be done. Obviously, comment down below about what you think of macOS Yosemite, and also what you think about iOS 8. And apart from that, I shall catch you in a later video. So I'll go through what was actually... oh, fucking Jesus.